Hello, I'm Wagsii. You might know me as that one guy that made all the System of a Down charts, but I also like to help people learn how to chart. As of making this video, I have over 150 charts under my belt, so I felt like I should try making a video series on how I do it. This video series also has a written version that you can find linked in the description if you're the kind of person that prefers that. I personally think written guides are a lot easier to reference, but I know some people prefer video tutorials, so I decided to make them both. This guide is intended to be very thorough. We're going to do a couple of episodes explaining each part of the charting process, and then the final video of this series will be a full walkthrough of charting a song from scratch. Anyway, let's jump right into it, starting with prerequisite knowledge. Don't worry, it's not anything complicated. Charting for Clone Hero is much easier than making custom content for most other games, but there are two things that are extremely helpful to learn, or to already know beforehand. First, you need to be fairly proficient at expert difficulty in the game. You don't need to be a god or anything, but you should at least be able to comfortably pass almost any song in any of the main Guitar Hero and Rock Band games. If you can't do this, you might not have a full understanding of how a chart is supposed to look. I won't say you can't do it, I'm no gatekeeper or anything, but you're going to have a steeper learning curve, especially if you can't play expert at all. If you can't play expert, but you still really want to make some charts, you might want to stick to some pretty simple ones. Secondly, it is really helpful if you have a basic understanding of how music is written on paper. I'm not saying you need to know any kind of advanced music theory or anything like that, or even know how to play an instrument, but if you understand how time signatures work and what things like quarter notes and eighth notes are, you're already a step ahead of somebody who might place notes willy-nilly without keeping time with the song. If you don't know this stuff, it's pretty straightforward, and you can honestly learn alongside learning how to chart. You'll just be at like a slight disadvantage because you're learning one extra thing. Now let's get into the programs you'll need for charting. I'll have links to all these in the description as well. You'll see here on my desktop these three programs. We'll just run through these one by one real quick. This first one is Moonscraper. This is the program you use to actually make the charts. There are a couple other charting programs out there, but this one is the most popular and user-friendly, so that's the one we're going to use for this guide. Next to that is Lyric Adder. You technically don't need it, but it makes adding lyrics to your songs a lot easier, and we're definitely going to use that for this guide, so you should get that one too. And this last one is Audacity. This is a really popular audio editing program that's been around forever, and we'll use that to set up the audio for our charts. If you're watching this, it's probably your first time charting, and you're going to want to pick a song that's not going to cause you too many problems, so let's go over what to look for. It doesn't have to necessarily be a slow song, but it probably shouldn't have a crazy solo or a complex rhythm either. The guitar should be clear and easy to hear and interpret, but you should actually steer clear of acoustic guitar songs at first, since those are usually pretty complicated to chart. But try not to choose anything too grungy either, like where the individual notes might melt together and be difficult to interpret. Most old school punk is probably it's the perfect example of everything your first chart probably should not be. It'll also be helpful not to choose a super obscure song. I like to use songster.com as a reference. This is Songster. And it'll be helpful if your first chart has a guitar tab on this website. It's a website that will actually play the guitar tabs back for you, so you can actually hear how accurate it is. We'll play this here. So yeah, and if that was wrong, then you would be able to hear that was wrong and not just have to, look at it and guess. But it's important to note that you should never just copy a guitar tab, no matter how closely it seems to match the song, it likely isn't 100% accurate, even for extremely popular songs like Master of Puppets. It's just nice to have reference points for things like beats per minute, which is right here, 212, and like time signatures, 4/4, like most songs, and then pitches and stuff, which is what you see written here. You'll also have an easier time charting a song made after around 2010 or so. Newer songs are often clearer and recorded to a click, and that means that the BPM won't change slightly throughout the song, like I assume Master of Puppets probably does because it's from the 80s. And then for those songs, you won't have to make little BPM adjustments throughout the song. That's really nice. You just set the beginning to 212 and then that's it. For older songs like this one, you probably have to, like, around here or something, you'd have to set that to 211, and then down here it's like 213 and stuff like that. That's a weird time signature. Anyway, I actually had to come back to this stupid thing. If you're making a chart and you're making a time signature that's 2132, you're doing something wrong. There's no way this is right. Like, I just had to put that in there. So let's say you've chosen a song to chart. Now, how do you get the actual audio file? The absolute best way to do this is to rip it from a CD if you can, but most of the time you're not going to be doing that, if ever. I know most people don't even have a way to do that anymore. So the next best way is to buy and download it from an official source like Amazon. But you probably don't want to pay for the audio file just for your chart. Obviously, I'm not going to go into too much detail about how to do that in a video, but I've seen prominent charters recommend SoulSeek, which is a peer-to-peer file sharing service. This is likely the best way to obtain unaltered audio files for free, but I'll leave your methods for acquiring your audio up to you. Just make sure it's a decent quality. Alright, we've got our audio file. Let's finally actually do something. Open up Audacity and load the song. You can also just click and drag it over like this. Boop. I'm just using the song I Don't Remember by Peter Gabriel. It just happened to be a song I already have on my computer. Your Audacity should have two waveforms like this, one for left and one for right. This might seem a little overwhelming at first if you've never used Audacity before, but that's because this program can actually do way more than we're going to use it for. The main thing we're going to do is add silence to the beginning of the track. This gives players of your chart a little bit of breathing room before the song starts to prepare themselves. You need to do this step for every single chart, even if there are no playable notes at the beginning of the song. It's just good practice. It's really important. Do not skip this step. So your song probably already has a few tenths of a second of silence at the beginning. So it's best to delete that before we add the silence in. So we're going to click the zoom tool here, and then we just click and drag a box at the very beginning of the song. As you can see, there's a little bit of dead space here. So now we're going to delete it. So we go back to the selection tool, and then click pretty close to the beginning. You don't want to, like, right up against the edge or anything, just in case you accidentally delete the tiniest bit of audio at the beginning. You can actually see a little bit of something right there, so I'm going to do right here or so. Now hold down Shift and click at the edge here. See how that lights up yellow? Hold down Shift, click. Now that's all highlighted, and you just press the delete key on your keyboard. Perfect. Now we zoom back out by going back to the zoom tool and then right-clicking here a couple times. I like being able to see the whole thing. Here. There we go. Alright, now we're going to actually add the 2 seconds of silence at the beginning. So at the top, you go to Generate Silence. and then you'll make this 2 seconds. I already have it set for 2 seconds since I've obviously done this a bunch of times. So you click OK, and there it is. Now this song actually doesn't have any dead silence at the end, but a lot of songs do, and if that's the case, you'll just use this cursor again to highlight and delete whatever you need to. Again, try to leave like a little bit of that actual silence at the end just so you don't accidentally cut anything off, but really that shouldn't be any longer than like 1 second. Now, if your song fades out, I think it used to be a thing that people would try to like reverse the fade out so that it didn't sound like it was fading out and it just kind of ended. I don't think that's the best way to do that. I don't know if people still do that, but I sure don't. I think it's a lot better to instead just stop charting the last few measures where it's where the notes start to get inaudible. If you have a super long fade out, one that's like a minute long where the stuff is going to be inaudible for like 30 seconds or something, I think I've really only had one chart ever that has been like that. But if that does happen, you can fix your fade out a little bit. Like instead of having the player listen to that full 30 seconds just not doing anything, you can kind of cut off the end of it and then add your own fade out in. I can show you how to do that here real quick. We'll pretend that, like, let's say this is super long. We want to cut this off right here. So this is going to sound really abrupt when it ends. So instead, you can highlight this area right here, and then you go to Effect and Fade Out. There. Now it's going to sound a lot more natural. There. That's all you need to do. Alright, now it's time to actually export the file. So we'll go to File, Export, and then do Export as OGG. That is, Clone here will read a couple different types of audio files, like it'll even read MP3 files, but you'll notice that most songs are OGG files, and that's because it's a small format. So we'll do export as OGG. Give me 1 second to get to where I'm going. Okay. So the way you want to format this is you're going to save it into your song folder, obviously. So for me, it's Clone Hero, songs, and then I like to make my own folder with my name in it. These are all my songs. And now you have to name this file as song. You can also name it a couple other things, like guitar. And those are for when you have the stems, which are separate audio files for each instrument. The advantage to that is if you miss a guitar note, it will mute the guitar track while the other instruments will still play. You'll likely never have access to the stems, but I felt like it was worth covering just in case. So we'll do song. I like to set the quality to 8. And oh, you need to actually put it in. So the actual naming convention for this, you need a new folder. You do the artist, so Peter Gabriel, dash, name of the song, I don't remember, and then at the end you should put in brackets your name, like that. That way, if someone is downloading the same song by a couple different charters, it won't like try to overwrite because you have multiple folders named Peter Gabriel I don't remember. So you make that, you put it in there. Clone Hero, songs, your name, artist and stuff. Save. And then you will make sure all this is clear. If it's not, you just press clear here. And then you hit OK. And it will export. Now, that's technically all you need to do, but I also like to make a couple different versions of the audio file. It's not going to be used for actually playing the song. We'll end up deleting them later, but for charting the song every once in a while, it can come in handy. And it's easier to do it now than having to go back if you need it. So press Control A to select everything. And then we're going to go to Effect, Vocal Reduction and Isolation, and Isolate Center. And just leave all this the way it is. We'll do OK. This is probably going to take like 10 or 20 seconds, somewhere in there. What this is doing, we're going to do Isolate Center, and we're also going to do one for Remove Center. This is going to make certain parts of the song sound clearer, like it's going to mute other parts of the song, kind of. And every once in a while, that can be super helpful. Like if the guitar track is kind of in the background, then if you mute the foreground mostly, then you're going to be able to hear the guitar better and actually chart it better. Probably only do that for like 1 in 10 songs maybe, but I just do it every time just in case. So you can actually hear what it sounds, how different it sounds. Alright, so then you'll do File, Export, export as OGG. And now for this you can name it whatever you want, but I just do Center Isolated. Save. Okay. Alright, now hit Control Z to undo that change. Now we're going to do it again. But instead of isolating the center, we will remove the center. We will wait another 10 seconds or so. There we go. Now you can see there's a lot less. Alright, File, Export, export as OGG, center removed, save. And that is it. Okay, so we have our audio files here. Now the next part we're going to do is the album and background pictures. You actually don't have to do this part right now, but I like to do it before I get started charting, just to get it out of the way. These two pictures are going to be named album.png and background.jpg. They have to be named that way, or else Clone Hero will not recognize them. Just like how your audio file needs to be named song.ogg. If it's named like the name of the song or anything, it won't show up in Clone Hero. So obviously these pictures are pretty self-explanatory. The album.png is what shows up in Clone Hero when you're hovering over the song. It's the album art, and that album art needs to be 500 by 500 or 512 by 512 pixels. I'm going to show you how to find an image that is the correct size, because usually if you just Google it, your first options are going to be a bunch of small images that are not helpful, and you want the image to be big enough and downsize it to the 500, not the other way around. Okay, so as you can see, I have Googled the name of the album, and I looked around until I found one that was 700 by 700, which is big enough. If you don't find one right away like that, you should just go to Tools, size large, and then it'll only show you big pictures. I'm not going to do that right just now, but so you'll save the image, and then we're going to open up that image in Paint. Okay. Now go to resize, pixels, 500. Perfect. Now we do File, Save As, PNG. And remember, name it album.png, save. And there it is. Now you'll do the exact same process for your background picture. You actually don't have to do a background picture if you don't want to, but I really recommend it. It makes your chart just look a lot better. This album picture is definitely necessary, though. You'll look like a bad charter if you don't have it. So your background.jpg, that can be whatever you want. I like to also make it the album picture usually. And the important thing to remember with your background picture is to make sure that it's not something super bright. Like if the album picture is mostly white, you're gonna want to look for a different alternative. Or what I'll often do is even edit the background picture a little bit so that it's not quite as bright if there are bright colors on it. Or in one case, I've actually done a negative so that the white background was black. So again, you can put whatever you want back there. Alright, now we have everything set up, and in the next video we're going to go over getting things set up in the actual charting program, Moonscraper.